Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. The European Union and China have reported progress in negotiations over electric vehicle trade, with Brussels emphasizing that the document provides guidance rather than a binding agreement, while Beijing describes it as a breakthrough. The development comes as Chinese EVs expand rapidly, including in Poland, now accounting for approximately 15% of the market amid significant job cuts in Europe's automotive sector, including 1/3 of the workforce at Stellantis Tychy plant in southern Poland. Now, the situation highlights the challenges of balancing open competition, market access, and industrial stability. And to speak more about it all, we're now joined by Jakub Jakóbowski, Deputy Director, Center for Eastern Studies. Good to have you on TVP World.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So I'll begin with these recent developments, just with China calling this an agreement, the European Commission saying it's only guidance. So practically what has changed because of this?
So this is an element of a long-term tug of war between China and the EU. Essentially, the EU has imposed tariffs or countervailing duties on Chinese EV imports years ago. And there's a way out, as the Commission points out. If a car producer wants to get those tariffs lifted, the producer, an individual producer, can sign an agreement with the Commission, with the EU, with some additional commitments on minimal prices of the cars they sell, but also commitments in terms of investments inside of the EU. So what the Commission proposes is to approach each and every car producer in China and strike individual deal, while Beijing's long-standing stance here is that they want an umbrella agreement that will apply to all at once, depriving the Commission of the possibility to play divide and rule tactics. So I would be cautious about the deal now, because the Commission still stands behind individual deals, which gives it power. And I think Beijing will still try to push it, its own agenda now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it does sound like, you mentioned, this is your words, a tug of war. Also looking at all this going forward, you said individual ones can now also lobby themselves. I mean, this doesn't sound like unity. Is this now just a tactical pause? Will this resurface? Because it doesn't sound like it's an end to this discussion at all.
Well, first of all, the level of tariffs is clearly not enough. That is, even though the Chinese cars, EVs, are subject to tariffs up to 35%, they still expand in Europe very rapidly. You've mentioned the Polish market with roughly 15% of the market. I think it's even higher in the electric cars. And the tariffs did not slow it down. Even the Chinese, both the officials unofficially and the car companies, say that the current level of tariffs will not stop them because they're so competitive. And in a way, I wouldn't say this is groundbreaking. What's very important here, though, is that it's not only about cars or electric cars. There's a number of industries, European industries, that are under immense Chinese pressure. So in a way, the stakes are much higher than this individual case, because if Beijing managed to kind of push for lifting the sanctions wholesale, the tariffs wholesale, it will kind of, the whole EU machinery protecting the European market may very well lose steam.
Mm-hmm. But you brought up this interesting that the duty is up to 35% on Chinese EVs. They're still selling strongly, though. So, are these duties even working? There's still heavy interest and growth of Chinese EVs in Europe.
I think it's worthwhile to put those European tariffs in perspective, because although they may look pretty high, in fact they're not, because if you look at alternative markets that China approaches, the US that imposed more than 100%, but you have countries like India that went more than 60%, you have Brazil and Indonesia that are also 2 digits, closer to 100%. In effect, the Chinese car makers face tariffs roughly everywhere in every major market now. or non-tariff barriers, and as a result, the European barriers are still pretty low. Moreover, what's actually absolutely paradoxical here is that the car prices on the Chinese market are way lower than in Europe. That is, in China, a given car model that is sold for I don't know, 30,000 euros in Europe, the very same model is sold in China for 15,000 euros. These are roughly half, and there's a number of those cases. So if the Chinese car producer wanted to even lower the prices of their cars on the European market even further, they would very well manage to do it. Of course, the problem is that they don't make money on the Chinese market because the price competition is so fierce. So they deliberately, opt for higher prices on the European market. But if they wanted, they could withstand even higher tariffs, and this is extremely problematic for the EU.
Let's also hone in a little bit about one market, which is Poland. I mean, if we're looking at the automotive GDP contribution, I think it's still about 9%. So that makes Poland in some ways quite dependent on all this, but also what's happened with that Tychy plant, looking at that being downscaled. So how do we balance that? Where is Poland going to fit in all this?
Well, luckily, Poland's automotive sector is pretty diversified. That is, we are strong in terms of trucks, in terms of trailers, and not only passenger cars. Of course, especially in southern Poland, there are major industrial facilities producing passenger cars. You've mentioned Tychy, there are more than that, and unfortunately, the production is declining. And I think this part of the sector is declining. To a large extent, due to demand slump in the European market, of course, but also growing pressure coming from China. And I think Poland is the third fastest growing market for the Chinese cars inside the EU, because as the Chinese car producers say themselves, Poles do not have their own national car brand, so they're not that attached to anything they buy. They like to experiment, and so they also care for the price to quality ratio, which is quite attractive in terms of Chinese cars. So all in all, we have a situation where indeed we're buying more and more Chinese cars, but part of this phenomenon is based on declining demand for European cars, which decreases production and demand for the industrial facilities, not only in big factories assembling cars in southern Poland, but also thousands of suppliers that feed their components into the German industrial machine, which is having problems because of all of that.
I mean, one element of all this is that I suppose the Chinese in particular will want to produce also more in Europe. I mean, also in one way to go around some of this challenge. Do you see that as a future? I mean, will the Chinese ramp up their production industrial capacity here in Europe over the next few years?
Well, in fact, the natural way of expanding on the foreign market is, of course, first to sell directly via exports. That's what the Chinese do now. Most of the cars are, large majority of the cars are shipped directly from China. And then, in theory, they should move at least parts of their operation into the local market, in Europe in this case. That was how it went with Korean or Japanese or American cars, for that matter. But the big problem here is that China's industrial ecosystem is very different from the market economies that I mentioned. That is, Chinese government and local governments are interested in maintaining production inside their own country, or, for that matter, subsidize transportation, like shipping those cars into Europe, just to maintain production inside China. It's worth mentioning that the Chinese industrial capacity, factory capacity of car manufacturers has only 50% rate of utilization. So China could have produced double the number of cars they produce now, and only then they will fill up their existing capacities. So the big question here is, will this distorted industrial ecosystem really incentivize the Chinese car producers to move their operations into Europe? I personally doubt it. And I believe it should be facilitated by a very deliberate industrial policy in Europe. Partially what the Commission is trying to do now, because the Commission stance, the thing we mentioned at the very beginning of the conversation, is that if you want to have those tariffs lifted, you have to commit to production inside Europe. So I think that's the crux of the thing, that the major challenge in front of the EU now is how to incentivize or force the Chinese producers to actually set up their operations there.
Just briefly at the end, so if we're looking at the long term, 10 years from now, is Europe, in your mind, still going to have a strong car automotive industry, or are we just going to be assembling things here for the Chinese?
Well, I'm pretty pessimistic, and not only because of the Chinese price competitiveness, but we are facing a technological revolution that's linked with all things cyber and digital inside a car. And here, Chinese brands, but also Tesla and American brands are way ahead. And I think that's also one of the reasons why the European automakers are struggling, and it's high time for a wholesale technological upgrade, because the terms of the competition will be very different than they used to be. It's not only about changing industrial combustion engine into a battery, but also turning from an analog car into a fully digitalized car.
All right, so we'll see if we have more unity or more unilateral decisions on this, but it's going to be one to watch. Look, thanks for that, all that analysis here. Much appreciated, Jakub Jakóbowski. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching. It concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.